All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us from all around the world for another Guesty virtual meetup. Today, we're talking about how to build a culture. So I'm pretty excited about this one. Now, for those of you who I have not met yet, I'm Dave Angotti, Chief Evangelist here at Guesty. But today's not about me, it's about my good friend Steve Schwab, who I've brought here to talk about culture with us. Now, you guys probably know this if you've been on any webinars with me before. I don't just put anybody in front of you. I put the people that I trust, the people that I know well. To kind of give you an idea of that, Steve has stayed with me several times this year already at my house. He taught my son how to drive, and he's been a friend for many years. So this isn't just some guy that I found online and I was like, oh, wow, he's doing really cool things. I'm going to put him in front of you. He is doing really cool things and has for a long time. We'll talk about some of that today, but I'm also bringing him to you as somebody that I personally trust. Now, Steve has over 2 decades of experience in short-term rentals. He's the founder of Casago. He's also pretty famous right now because he just completed the merger with the Casa, if you haven't heard of that. In addition to that, some things you may not know about him. He's a ranger. And so he's done all this really cool stuff. We'll get into some of that today, but today we'll be talking about culture. So before we get started, I wanted to run through the agenda. This is what we're going to do. A few opening words by me, and then we'll dive straight into Q&A with Steve. So I did want to introduce you to Guesty. There's a lot of big numbers on your screen here, all this funding and locations, how long we've been in business. And really what I want you to take away from these numbers, they're impressive numbers, but why do they matter to you? They matter because we put together a team that can serve your needs. Because of these numbers, we are more able to serve the needs of the local property managers and give you the tools you need to be better at your business, to produce higher ADRs, better accounting, distribution, operational efficiency. These numbers translate to that. And at Guesty, we believe that when we create optimal guest experiences alongside you, that ultimately your business will grow. Now, one of the cool things about Guesty, whether you're a property manager with tens of thousands of listings like Steve, all the way down to somebody just first starting out, we have a product that is suitable for you, both today and in the future. So, I want to talk about culture here just for a quick second. And culture is kind of like this idea of an iceberg. There's 10% of culture that other people see. That's the part above the water. That's your external or your surface culture. It's easily visible by everybody that interacts with your business. But the part that really matters, that's the part below the surface, the internal or the deep culture, the hidden part. That's 90% of your team's culture. This is going to determine how your employees, guests, and people in general will feel when they interact with your brand. It's this silent engine almost that's behind every loyal guest, all of your owner relations, your high performing team. And it's not that mission statement on your website. It's definitely not a box you send employees or something like that. This is how your team will interact with the public when things start to go sideways. Your culture will determine that. It's why a guest will ultimately book again with you, leave you a positive review. It's why an owner feels attached to your brand. It all comes down to culture. Hospitality is that way. It's how we make people feel, and our culture runs right through that as well. Did they experience the property because of a technology tool? Maybe that was a part of it. But the bigger part of it is all of these people and all of this culture that gets built to service the property that creates a guest experience. So today we're talking with Steve Schwab, and he knows all about this, and he's talked about this with me before. And so I'm so excited to bring him to you today. He knows that culture is how we ensure that positive guest experiences happen at every level. And I'm looking forward to him sharing some of those tips. So, really, without further delay, I want to bring Steve in. And Steve, thanks for being here with us today.
David, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So I want to start out with kind of an easy one. You've talked before with me when we've talked culture about culture is what your team is doing when nobody's watching them. And what does that look like on the ground in short-term rentals for a short-term rental operator?
Yeah. Well, when you really think about what a culture is, you have to break it all the way down to its fundamental level. And what that really is just social norms, right? So, what are the social norms that your team has without the direct oversight of leadership? And so when you're not looking, is the social norms of your team to not work or to not answer the phones or to speak to your homeowners in a way that they wouldn't speak to them in front of you? Is it to pick up the phones as quickly as they would when you're there? Those social norms that are created and are accepted by the people who are working for you outside of your direct oversight is really what the culture is, right? So as you start to be intentional about your culture as opposed to just letting it run wild and hoping that it's going to turn out well, cultivating that culture into something that you're proud of, the decisions that are being made outside of your purview is really the fundamentals of how we end up getting to a culture that honors what your vision for your company is.
You just said something that I want to drill in on a little bit. Cultivating a culture. I think culture is this thing that either happens on purpose, you design it, you're intentional about it, or on accident. Can you maybe talk through early days of Casago and the difference between on purpose culture versus accidental culture?
Sure. I mean, every single day is a wrestling match for the culture of your company. And all the actors within your company are inputting, into that culture of what's going to be acceptable. And as you as you start to think about what's the vision for your company and what are those principles we're going to follow in order to get to that vision, if you're not holding people accountable to what your principles are and what your values are, it pretty much runs wild, and you're just hoping for the very best, right? And I've talked often about culture as an immune system. You have a lot of people who will come along who will either comply or be convicted on your values and principles, and there's some who just won't. And they don't believe the same things you believe. They don't act the way that you act. They may be actually really great people, but they have a very different viewpoint of how the world should work. We have at Casago a philosophy around everything being owner centric. Our employees are the most important people in our ecosystem, but all of our employees need to be making decisions on what's best for our homeowners. And we've had employees say, I don't believe that. I think the guests are the most important people. And so over time, if we can't find a way to bring them in and make sure that they're operating within our culture, they probably shouldn't be part of our culture. They probably should be part of our company. They should probably go find a company like Airbnb or other ones that really believe that the guest is the center of the ecosystem. And they're not bad people. They just have a very different viewpoint on that. So cultivating your company by first making sure everybody understands your values, constantly repeating your principles, holding the team accountable to them every single day, practicing what you preach, promoting the culture, and then making sure you understand what you're permitting. Because whatever you permit, you promote, right? So ensuring that those fundamentals are there is really how you cultivate a culture over time, as opposed to truly letting somebody who's sitting in the corner when you're not paying attention and not enforcing what you believe you should be doing, start letting their principles and values start to take over. So it's important that you're present and planting your flag with your team, and then holding that ground, and not giving up any ground on what you truly believe.
I really like the immune system analogy because we think about the immune system. What does it do. If something does not belong there, if something is attacking the organism, it's the immune system's job to get rid of that thing.
Hmm.
And that's culture's job. If we've built the culture correctly and we have a healthy culture that's serving our owners' needs in this instance, and then somebody comes in and attacks that mission that everybody's on collectively, then the immune system is like, whoa, we don't like this. Um, you know, I was thinking back to a conference where Tony Hsieh was at the conference, and he was talking actually about how Zappos had built a culture of customer service. And he said one thing that stuck with me that I think kind of is applicable here. He talked about how they would pay a Zappos employee to quit. And every Zappos employee knew that they could cash out and would get paid money to leave their job that day. And the idea was as soon as they're no longer happy to be here, fanatical even to be here, they might get paid $10,000 to quit.
Yeah.
And it's like how you apply process to culture or to that immune system is a fun thing, right? And so I think about orange with you. Can you talk through orange a little bit and what that means and how that could be protective?
Yeah, I think Tony Hsieh was right on track with that. He was actually one of our homeowners before he passed away at Casago. Um, I love what he was doing there, and it reminds me a little bit of Ranger School. At Ranger School, if for those who don't know, I was in the military and an airborne ranger, First Ranger Battalion. In Ranger School, the way people act in front of leadership is not always the way they act when it's just the peers, in operations, right? And so we had this ability where we would, people would get peered out of Ranger School. So if you're the show off and the guy who's kissing up to leadership and looking great in front of them, but then being the dirtbag and not following the culture and not being part of the group and contributing to what the social norms were uh, outside of the leadership oversight, your peers could remove you from Ranger School. And it happened every single cycle. And I think that's an interesting way. You can't really do that so much in the civilian world. There's labor laws and things like that. But it's a great example of how to build a culture in which the social norms reject those who don't belong within that organism. When it comes to the Orange Credo, you know, early on, the company had grown from 60 units to 300 units in about 24 hours. The property management company that was the largest in our city left Mexico in the middle of the night with everybody's money, payroll, and records. It was just gone. They were just gone. And so I got a call from a couple different HOAs saying, "Can you help?" And so I went over there, and I literally didn't have enough employees to man the front desks of the different resorts we had to take over. So we had housekeeping managing the front desk. We had maintenance guys who didn't speak English just
No.
helping us out. It was a lot. And this was the first time, if we really think about it, that the fish caught the whale, right? And so we were outsized, outnumbered, outgunned, and underfunded. And so we were able to save a lot of the homeowners. In fact, I went out and pawned a lot of my own things to get the money to be able to pay the bills that the last property management company hadn't paid, and that act of kindness really was the launch pad for Casago. At As I was taking over before that, I'd been used to running small teams of rangers and fraternities, and I wasn't equipped to run large organizations. And suddenly there was all these people in the company I didn't know personally, and I couldn't speak into them. And we started doing some things that weren't part of our culture because we couldn't indoctrinate fast enough. I couldn't build the social norms faster than we could hire. And it was a real problem. So I remember going down to the beach with a six-pack of beer by myself and sulking, wondering if this was a bad idea, if the whole thing was about to crash, and wondering why I could lead men in the military, but I couldn't lead a property management company in Mexico. And I realized that I hadn't been able to scale the way that I was sharing what was important to us. I thought
Mm.
about, Ranger Battalion and the Ranger Creed, how every single day we repeated the Ranger Creed, and men uh, uh, were either promoted or removed from special operations by this creed. It
Wow.
was written into everything we did, and it hit me that generations of special operations, soldiers had had this single document that helped them understand what we were supposed to be doing. And so that night I started writing down what I understand now are principles. I thought they were just rules, and kind of copying the Ranger Creed and thinking about how it was constructed. It became our Orange Credo, and passing them out. And that was the beginning of being intentional with the culture. And the truth is, we as leaders can't speak into everybody every single day. There's about 35,000 decisions that are made by a person every single day. 90% of those are subconscious. So that means if we're awake for 16 hours and we get 8 hours of sleep, about 17,500 decisions are being made at work, uh, which means about 1,750 conscious decisions. The rest are unconscious decisions. Uh, and those decisions directly impact our business. And so, how do you decide what's a good decision? Well, our teammates want to make good decisions and want to do a good job, but we have to give them like a guideline. So, this Orange Credo became the standard in which, if you can defend your decisions according to the Orange Credo, you're going to make a good decision. You might not make the best decision, but you're not going to make a bad decision if you understand the principles and making good decisions on that. And by getting with our team every single day, talking about one of the principles, how do we interpret it? Where have we done well? Also, where have we failed? Having a safe environment to talk about where we're failing at it. And even myself, sometimes I'll talk about where I've failed at something that we've done, or a decision I've made and how it wasn't aligned. Because it's for me as much as it is for everybody else. Um, that environment builds a culture that's making that everybody understands what good decisions are. And when you start having individuals making good decisions, holding each other accountable, uh, and building a group outside of your direct oversight, that becomes a social norm, which is a culture. When you have a culture that's making good decisions uh, on a regular basis, just like children, when they start making good decisions, we start giving them more freedom. They build trust, and when you start having trust with your teammates, they start to get autonomy and empowerment, and you're able to scale your culture. Because at the end of the day, all of us are having decisions being made in our name right now, uh, somewhere in a house, somewhere in a condo, somewhere on a telephone, somewhere on an email. People are making decisions right now in the name of our companies and ourselves. And the percentage of those decisions that are good directly impacts our relationships and reputation with the outside world. And that fundamental of having those principles directly correlates to the empowerment of the good decisions that they're making on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis.
And I would say that culture is so important that if you don't have culture right, you can't have autonomy in your employees. It will impact scaling. It will impact whether or not you can sleep at night because you don't know if things are being handled correctly. And so when you see these people, like oftentimes 40, 50 listings, right around that time is a very difficult scaling, benchmark to exceed. Like you,
Yeah.
you hit that 50 point and that's all you can do yourself. And
Yeah.
I think what's happening here is two things a lot of times. Your process, which culture and process are very closely aligned, but your processes are broken probably. Your culture hasn't been built to withstand growth. And those are two things you're going to have to fix to really push through that 50 unit mark and do it effectively. And so you talked about practice, promote, permit. You
Right.
talked with me about that before. You mentioned that in passing a second ago. Can you give an example of practice, promote, and permit, and like why that's so important to culture?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I go there, you're absolutely right about the 50 mark. I always talk about how somewhere between the 40 and 60 mark, depending on how widespread you are and the type of units you're managing, that's the first break point of short-term rental organization, right? And what you were doing up to that time was probably you being the leader of a small team that
Exactly.
you're speaking into. And that's, if you think about it, that's exactly where I was when suddenly I went from 60
Hmm.
to 300, right?
Yeah.
Everything broke because you
Yeah.
can't lead a team the same way at 40, 60 as you do at 100 to 120, 300, 500. There's these break points that naturally happen as we scale. And if you
And
want to,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
if you want to,
If you don't figure that out,
yeah,
you can't push through that break point because right now, maybe at 50 units, every time this reservationist has a question, they can ask you. Every time the maintenance person misses something, you catch it. But then that does not work at some point. And then that's when you find yourself on the beach with a six pack of beer, like asking, how in the world did I end up here?
if you want to know if your culture and processes are broken, if you're making policies to keep people from doing stupid things, your culture is broken. So when you're watching people doing crazy, stupid things, you shouldn't have to make policies on. If you're making policies on that and trying to enforce it from people doing stupid things, you're not culturing right. So,
You you cannot make enough rules to stop
mhm,
stupidity. That will
right.
not happen. You can give enough frameworks to encourage correct actions, but you cannot make enough rules to stop all the incorrect actions. It's
It's got to be
impossible.
an operating system, not authoritarian rule making system. So, so practice, promote, and permit. So if you really think about it, these are the ways that we operate every single day, consciously or unconsciously. First of all, only the first people that will know if you're a hypocrite are your children and your employees. And by the way, your children will tell you first, uh, especially when they're younger or teenagers. But so if you're not practicing what you're out talking about every single day, the hypocrisy will come through. You're not aligned with your own values. You're not aligned with your own culture. And of course, your team's not going to follow you. You're not going to have the credibility to have a conversation about it. So promote, a pretty little book or a nice poster on the wall or, saying something once, having something in a meeting occasionally is cute and kind, but it's not promoting it. You have to put your culture into the mouths of your teammates so often that when you speak the words, you watch their lips moving along with you because they know it by heart. When they are so sick and tired of hearing you say it that they can repeat it themselves, you've almost said it enough. So you got to get into the mouths and minds. You got to get into the subconscious because remember, 90% of the decisions they're making are subconscious. When it starts to become part of the neural system, where the clusters in your mind start to form around this and make decisions around what we're talking about every single day and promoting it, and then making sure that people are being rewarded and also being coached by these exact same principles on a daily basis. That's how you promote it. And then permit. What you permit is what you promote. If we tell everybody, hey, look, we're here getting our work done, there's no surfing social media, during work time, and suddenly you walk away and you find a post somewhere that the teammates are doing during work time that's a personal post or something like that. If you don't address it immediately, you've just promoted it. So if you're permitting, a teammate speaking down to the rest of the crew or being unkind to one of your crewmates, but they're a rock star, so you're afraid to say something, you've just promoted that you can be unkind to your teammates as long as you are performing well. And that builds a culture within itself. So making sure that you practice yourself, promote it constantly, and then watching what you permit over the course of literally years is how you build a culture that's sustainable and that social norm where the teammates themselves say, that's not how we treat each other. That's not how we're going to act towards each other. And when they start to enforce it themselves, that's when you have a real culture.
So if you allow that behavior, it doesn't matter if it's a rock star employee, you might as well stick a rubber stamp approved on the behavior and hang it on the wall for everybody to see.
Exactly. You're promoting it. You're saying, hey, if you do a really good job, you can be a jerk to everybody else. You know,
Yeah. We see this in sports teams a lot. You have to be a team player even if you are a star. And the best stars, the best players of all time talk about this because if you cannot get the most out of other people, you will not win the championship. It's the same in business. Like I'm thinking about Kobe and Phil Jackson in one of Kobe's last interviews. He talked about how Phil Jackson came to him as they were making a run through the playoffs and said, I need you to score fewer points. And he said, what do you mean? He goes, well, we can win the Western, but we can't win the championship without Shaq involved. And he's getting less and less involved. We need to make sure he feels like a part of this. I need you to pass more. I need him to be more involved. I need Shaq to feel more like a star. And so Kobe went on to do that. They went on to win the championship. But he talks about this in depth on the School of Greatness podcast, one of the last interviews he ever did. And I think about culture, like that's hard to do, to lower your view of yourself, to raise the view of others around you or the view of the mission around you. But that really embodies, I think, what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I've never heard that story before, but I mean, that's exactly, right in line with what we're looking at here. The fact that he told the story and he complied with that, it really puts the mission over ego.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a time that you had to make a hard decision to protect your culture. Can you think of a time you had to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly there's been a few different, scenarios. I'll tell you that I think I was lucky enough to have a team around me that supported me. But in the early days, we had a home. It was beachfront, 12 bedroom. I think we didn't have a lot of homes at the time. We were just building. And I had the homeowner speak down to my team in Mexico and was it was pretty bad. And so I asked for a meeting and I went out to his house. And this was a significant part of my income at the time. And he he started in. I was like, look, you don't talk to my team like that. I won't talk to you like that. In fact, one of the lines in my Orange Credo has come from this conversation. Um, we will give honesty and respect and expect the same in return. And so he apologized, said he'd never do it again. I said, that's great. Let's talk about some of the problems with your home and the reservations. And his wife jumped in and he yelled at her in front of me and in a pretty disrespectful way. And I looked at him and was like, I'm gonna tell you this one time. Uh, I once allowed one of my friends to disrespect his uh, girlfriend in front of me, with words. And I told my dad about it, and my dad was disappointed in me that I didn't say anything. And I'm going to tell you right now, my father would be really disappointed in me if I allow this to continue. So I'm going to tell you, I don't know what happens in your home, but it doesn't happen in front of me. Just do it again, and we're out. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And not within 5 minutes, he's at it again. I slammed my hand down on the table, said, "I'm done with you." I got up and I told him he was fired. And my GM was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, nope, you're fired. We're out of here. We're done. He's like, you can't fire me. You've got reservations. I was like, I'll take him somewhere else. I walked out of his house and he called for 3 weeks. And I never, ever rehired him. We ended up finding, other homes. In fact, uh, I call it Providence or the universe or God. I choose that as God, but, everybody has their own belief system. Two other homes came up within a week that we were able to move all the reservations to. And it went on for years that, he would call and never take his call. He passed away. And, 15 years later, I'm living in Scottsdale and I'm walking past a bakery and Fry's grocery stores. And there's his wife, his widow. And she immediately recognized me and came over and hugged me. She said, I never thanked you for sticking up for me. And um, I think that whether or not the economics were there or not, uh, I can look myself in the mirror and hold, the team accountable because of those sort of moments where you take the risk of losing the economics, but you believe in your business even more, and it helps you build your company up. So I think those are the sort of stories that you need to be able to have to label yourself as the kind of person who will hold to your principles even when it comes to losing money. When you can do that, who you are as a genuine human being will come out to other homeowners without ever having to talk about it.
You know what I love about that is I think when we talk company culture, we start to think of it like as this vacuum of like this is how we make more money, this is how this thing runs a little smoother, or we can grow faster. But a proper culture is going to impact lives,
Yeah.
not just the profits. And like that's what you're talking about. A woman coming up to you and giving you a hug 15 years later because you impacted her life. She wasn't an employee. She didn't contribute to the P&L or anything like that, but you impacted her life. And what a
Yeah.
responsibility all of us have, regardless of our position in a company, to impact the lives of other people around us and make the world a better place one person at a time. And a good culture lets us put like an exclamation point after everybody's efforts, which is super exciting if you're in a point of leadership.
Yeah. If you don't believe in what you're doing yourself, it'll come through. And so I think that it was interesting that as I was thinking back on it, about 10 years after the that happened, I didn't know anybody remembered it. And a new employee came up and had told me the story of this. It's like, how do you even know about this? And like the team told me. And so
Wow.
the echoes of it lived on without even me knowing about it. And the truth is, the echoes of our actions live on for decades within our own organization, whether in the conscious or subconscious of those who are with us.
Hmm. I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the Casago Vacasa merger. I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody that's here on the webinar wants to hear a little bit about that. I want to speak with you specifically about the challenges you have had or maybe had early on trying to merge the two cultures, and
Mhm.
just what has that looked like, inside the company.
Well, in in the famous words of some generals, we're surrounded and outnumbered. We'll allow them to surrender at any time. Uh,
I think they surrendered, Steve.
it's,
I'm pretty sure the white flag went
yeah,
up in May.
look, there's a lot of really good people at Vicasa. Those people on the ground have had one hand tied behind their back and have been in a structure that doesn't allow them to build relationships and do the kind of things they know that need to get done when they're face to face with homeowners. Um, Changing the structure, I never understood how much the structure of the organization can impact the culture of the organization. It's really pronounced. And so a lot of structure is changing, getting the franchise model put into place for people having conversations with homeowners at a local level, the way in which we speak to them, the psycholinguistics of the words we use, the enablement and the enablement of and empowerment of local people being able to make decisions on the ground that they know are the right things for those homeowners over time um, is so important. And the structure can really hamper that or hobble that. Uh, Building the Casago culture into the Vacasa team and then dispersing it to a decentralized model of franchising where we're selling every single market that Vacasa had to locally owned and operated businesses, people who are going to be much closer to those homeowners and to the front door of those properties. It's the second time the fish has swallowed the whale at Casago, and I'm learning a lot of lessons about leadership and at a very new level for me. I would tell you this, that speaking to our teams, holding them accountable, and making the changes in bite-sized elements is pretty important. And we're already seeing it. We're seeing positive churns in a lot of markets. We had 42 markets that had positive churn this month. Uh,
It's
you know,
amazing.
and it's about the relationships. Everybody, the leadership at Vacasa kept saying, it's a tech company. It's a tech company. It was never a tech company. It was always a relationship business that had tech enablement, but it should have always been a relationship business. And just making those changes over time and doing the right things for the homeowners is slowly changing that back. Our churn is down 62% year over year. We've got a lot of good things happening. That's because of just some structural things that we've done. When it comes to culture, um, getting the Orange Book into people's hands, understanding that at first people comply. When I first put the Orange Book into the hands of Casago teammates, I handed it to Erica, and Erica is the GM of Mexico for me. And she opened it up. She goes, "This is the stupidest idea you've ever had." She's like, "And by the way, what kind of egomaniac are you? You're going to make us carry around your little words, a little picture of you, and talk about it every single day." She's like, "This is the dumbest idea." It's like, "Just try it." She's like, "This feels like a cult." We had 5 people quit the first week. It's like, so they're like, "I don't
Wow.
belong to a cult. I didn't join a cult." Um,
Oh no.
and so about about 3 or 4 months later, Erica says, "I need to tell you something." Like, uh-oh, bad news. Who quit? What happened? Did something happen in the condo? Did a homeowner leave? She's like, "I don't even want to tell you." I'm like, "What is it?" She's like, "It's working." I go, "What's working?" It's like, "This stupid little book you have is working." I go, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I was walking down the stairs and I was about to turn the corner and I heard two reservationists talking about a problem in the condo and what to do about it. And they opened up the orange credo and they actually quoted something and they made a good decision, didn't come and ask us, and off they went." I was like, she's like, "I couldn't believe it." And then I went to the housekeeping meeting the same day and she's like, "I think you may put them up to it." But I walked over after the meeting, I walked over to a small group of housekeepers talking, and there was two new housekeepers there, along with three orange badgers. Anybody who's been with Costco for more than 10 years gets an orange badge. And they've got this credo open, speaking to them in Spanish about what does it mean to take good care of the guests, how they're your personal, the renters are your personal guests, and make sure they're safe and well cared for, and comfortable. And she's like, "I can't believe it. And I hate it that you're right, but it's working." And so she started off with compliance. She complied because I'm paying her, she'll do it. This is stupid. And then over time, and few people quit who didn't belong, who didn't believe in what this was. And we planted a flag and they didn't fit in that camp. But over time, it became very natural and comfortable. And she found conviction in what was happening because she saw it working. And to think that suddenly we're going to walk into a whole new organization with a lot of really good people and hand them this credo and think that they're going to immediately, go into conviction about it just isn't realistic. We're starting off again with, compliance. They'll do it because we told them to. But as they start to hear things are working, when they start to hold each other accountable, when they start to use some of the principles and with each other and with homeowners, uh, they'll eventually come over to conviction, those who belong in the camp, and we'll have built that culture into a much larger organization. And that's the way we have to go from, the conversion and merger with Vacasa to a complete Casago ecosystem with people who truly believe in our vision and our mission and how we do it and how things get done. And I think that's the way that we end up getting to the end of this road by building our culture into the larger organization.
You talk about you can only be local in one place. That's something I've heard you say quite a few times. You alluded to that as we were talking about the merger of the two cultures in addition to the two companies. Um, I was thinking about our mutual friend JB, who's your franchisee in Las Vegas, had the opportunity to meet him and then spend some time with him on a few Zoom calls. Great, great guy. He and his wife run the franchise out there. And just thinking about how local JB is and how that becomes part of the culture of your company, this franchisee that you've put forth, and the power, if you can replicate JB across all of these markets that Vicasa's in, then I'd be shocked, as good as your churn numbers are now, over a year ago, how much even better they'd be once you have like JB replicated into these new markets as people become local in one market at a time. Um, Interested to just hear your thoughts on that as you take this back to local markets.
Yeah, I mean, for full disclosure, JB was my platoon sergeant from Ranger Battalion. So, a lot of history there from back when I was a 20-some-year-old kid to now we're still working together again. he's the embodiment of local. He's come in, he's gotten into the local chamber of commerce. He's worked with the local realtors. He understands the permitting requirements. He understands what parts of town, work for vacation rentals, which ones don't. He's when something happens in the middle of the night, he gets up and goes and takes care of it, right? He knows who to call,
Wow.
but more importantly, he knows who not to call. And
Yeah.
as he's building this organization and culture of excellence within Las Vegas, he's the guy on the ground. Him and his wife Alana are the people on the ground, and they're so involved and so fantastic and just near zero churn. It's just an unbelievable, small office that's growing, every week, and I'm really proud of them. And last night I had dinner. I'm here in Portland going through the first Casago University to ever be taught in the United States. I came to audit the course and make sure things were, going well, and it was going to, fit the culture. And I got to have dinner last night with, with Jay and Sharon and Kitch, and they've bought a market. They own hotels. They're a very successful family. And I sat with them, and we talked about the local organization and their local where they live and how they're getting involved and the culture. And how they love the teams there, and they're going to re-empower them and put them back into the ecosystem and get the tools they need. And they're loving, what they're learning at Costco University. They're bringing back, they asked how many orange books they could get a hold of, their hands on to start immediately, going and practicing, promoting and permitting, right? And it gave me so much of a charge, because I see these people who are really short-term mental nerds. They're loving what they're doing. They're hospitality people, and they're coming into these markets who've had massive churn, and they want to go meet the homeowners. They want to go have conversations. They want to build relationships. And they want to help their teammates and be empowered and grow. And what we've done with JB is what's happening now in this merger, and this dinner last night. It it really put confidence in me that finding the right people to take over these markets and make decisions, as a local in a local market, and being responsible to your neighbors and to your teammate, having stewardship over your teammates, and being owner centric with your homeowners, and truly loving on your guests. You can only do that in a limited amount of spaces. And I will tell you that the team I met last night, taking over their market, is going to be life changing for the Vacasa teammates that are working there, and it's going to be game changing for the homeowners and guests. I just can't tell you how excited I'm about it. And so that local concentration of where they're at is going to change that entire market. If you mark my words, hear me now, believe me later. They're going to go down to near zero churn. They're going to be like another JB and Alana within the next 6 months. And we're going to do that all over the United States. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, it's fantastic to think about. Consistency is one of the advantages, I think, of what Casago brings to the table. They have a playbook, they have technology, they have the credo, all of these different things that a franchisee gets access to once they join your network. When I think consistency, the brand that comes to mind first is McDonald's. Like I can go into McDonald's anywhere in the world and kind of know what I'm going to get, right? But the problem with that is it's lost its local flavor.
Mhm.
And I kind of like to find the local restaurants when I go to a new town. Can
Yeah.
you talk through how you're solving that challenge of not losing the local soul of the individual markets, but also delivering that brand consistency?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And by the way, when I think of consistency, I think of Four Seasons, but that's where my head goes. You know, Short-term rentals by design have a unique experience at each property. They're locally they're owned and loved by an individual homeowner, maybe sometimes an investor, but each one's different. I hear a lot of people talking about standardizing, 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 and I don't think as a industry, we should get overly standardized. The soul of each of these properties, the uniqueness of them, the experience at each property, it actually really matters. And it's one of the reasons why people come to short-term rentals as opposed to just a hotel, which is standardized, right? In fact, actually, the guys last night who own a lot of hotels was talking specifically just about this. What can we standardize? What's important? And if you really think about what's important when we talk about what's standardized, uh, it's really the experience, the quality of the experience. So what do we need to be standardizing? We need to be standardizing, our service. It is it easy to get into the property? Are you going to have a frictionless entry into the property? Are you going to be able to find it well? Can you count on it when you bring your friends that it's going to be clean? Is it going to be as advertised? Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be comfortable? Are the touches there that make it, with the towels and sheets and linens and forks and knives and, what you're expecting to come in and have a hospitable stay, are those always going to be in place? And, trustability is bookability. Can I trust that this unique property has is going to meet my expectations of cleanliness and as advertised and safe and cared for? Those are the things that at Casago, the the franchisees are actually much more into it than I thought they would be. They're looking to how do we continuously take the brand and make the consistency of the experience of the service and hospitality while having unique properties. And I think that's how, as an industry, we should be thinking about building the industry's reputation, not just Casago's reputation. Because if we all build that kind of consistency as good actors for our industry, short-term rentals will grow. And that, as they say, with high tides, all boats, rise, right? So I think that's how I'm thinking about consistency within what we do.
Man, that's such a timely observation. I was going back and forth with a mutual friend of ours, who actually owns a company that Vicasa does business with. And he was telling me that he's just kind of lost faith in the vacation rental industry. He's had too many times he showed up and hasn't had a good experience. And he's a little bit concerned now when he books, and he would rather just book hotels most of the time.
Mhm.
Um, and so when we start to think about that as an industry, we have a problem that needs to be solved. So I guess where does maybe technology fit into solving that problem for the entire industry, or can it? Is this all a cultural thing, or is there a technology piece to it? How do we solve this problem at scale that's impacting everybody?
Your son and I both love cars and Star Wars, but we'll put Star Wars aside for now. If you gave me the technology of putting me in a Ferrari and putting a true race car driver, Andretti or one of those guys in nearly any car, in a Honda, and took us around the track, they're going to beat me, right? They're going to beat me around that track because they know how to drive. Technology is great, and technology helps, and technology is an enabler and a force multiplier. Technology is not the solve. You have to have great technology, but you have to have the race car. You have to have the race car driver, the user, who's going to enforce the standards, who's going to run the operations, who's going to have the accountability to do that. And then they certainly need the technology like Guesty or whatever they decide to use to make sure that their vision is coming to life at scale. But until the individual property manager decides they're going to hold themselves accountable and their homeowners accountable and their team accountable to do the right things for the guests time over time over time and build that reputation, the technology doesn't matter. So first thing that has to happen is us as an industry has to decide who we are and what we're going to do. And then we need to hold ourselves accountable. And then let's go get the technology to make sure that we can scale that.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So where would you say, so how does somebody then decide when's the right time to start looking into technology? When's the right time to start trying to build their tech stack if they have to have the race car driver before the race car?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, get your values right. sit down and write the there's something called obituary values where you actually write your own obituary, and then you decide, and then all the things that you hope that your family and friends will say, and you try to live up to those values. And so it's a great way to consider what really is important as a user value. In some ways, doing that, doing the same, do a press release of the day you sold your company to somebody else, and what would your homeowners and guests and teammates say about your company at the
Wow.
end of that? Write that out and then start working back from there. Once you understand where you want to go and how you and what you'll actually do to get there, um, then go look for the technology immediately with the questions in mind is, will it solve the problems of how I get to my press release of the sale of my company in 20 years or 10 years, whatever you decide that's going to be. Start asking the questions. Is it going to help me with, with my inspections? Is it going to help me get clarity with my homeowners? Is there going to be transparency of how I provide, services to my guests? Is it going to help with check-ins? Is it going to give me is it going to be able to provide the information for good financials so I can build value into my company and be able to show the EBITDA at the end of this journey with this property management company? All those questions will lead you down the road of what technology you're going to need to hit your goals at the end of your journey as a property manager.
So yeah, you have to have the right people, then you have to have the right technology, which becomes a force amplifier on the people. But ultimately, the right people or the right technology doesn't replace the right culture, I think is what I'm hearing. And like culture, you could have the right people and still have the wrong culture. Did I hear that correct?
Yeah. The right vision, get your vision right. Where are you going? Get your culture right. Make sure everybody understands how you make your decisions. Get the right people that are aligned with that. Put your technology in place that enables them to be successful at the vision you've given the right people, and then get on with your work and then hold them accountable.
All right, so I'm going to ask one final one, and then we'll look to the audience. If anybody from the audience has questions, go ahead and get those in. We have a couple minutes for those. My last one for you is, how do you check the pulse of your culture from time to time? You've built this incredible culture, but I'm guessing you want to make sure it stays incredible. How how do you do that?
You got to be on the ground every single day. I mean, look, I always talk about, like, if I hear a complaint that's a one-off, you know, that's just part of business. If I hear the same complaint multiple times, I've got a trend going on. There's something happening on the ground that's happening at scale. We need to get in there and get involved. First thing you do is get in with your teammates and have conversations, see them, see their faces, see what's going on. I can have a conversation with somebody over the phone, but if I can't see their face and see what's happening, I can't tell what's really happening with the emotion. Contact with your people, being approachable, being a safe place to have conversations about what went wrong. If your team says, "Hey, I really screwed this up and I need to figure out how to help it," and you bite their head off for it, you become an unsafe leader. You have to be the type of leader that you can have good conversations with your teammates about, especially when they disclose. Building a culture in which they can have real conversations about it, being involved. Absentee being an absentee owner does not do your culture any justice at all. When when you start hearing about your leaders making decisions or making rules that they shouldn't have to, you've got a culture problem. When you hear about your team uh, deciding on policy over principles, you've got a culture problem, right? So the feedback day to day of what you're practicing, promoting, and permitting, you will hear when there's misalignment with it, and you'll feel it in your gut. That's your body telling you something's going wrong with the situation, and it's not aligning with your own values. You can feel it in your stomach, and don't ignore it. Trust your gut, and then start exploring without being accusatory. Start exploring and figuring out what's going on and how to solve for it.
Love that. So we've had a few people write in asking if they could somehow get a copy of the Orange Book. How would somebody either get a copy of that or see that online?
Yeah, I'd love to share it. I believe that sharing your culture is the way you keep your culture. If you go to my LinkedIn and write me, I'd be happy to send over a book. I ran out because we had to go print like 40,000 of them now. But the order's just coming in, and if you'll write me over on LinkedIn, I'll be happy to get one out to you as soon as the new as soon as the new print comes through.
Oh, Steve, thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing just your insight. Um, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here with talking a little bit about what's coming up. We have Guesty, which is going to be down in Mexico City. Steve, my good friend here, along with many other people, are going to be on the stage at Guesty. So I'm looking forward to the session with Steve. We're going to be talking about the fish that ate the whale, the whole story of the Casago Vicasa merger. And for those of you who haven't heard a little bit on my take of that story, it starts almost a year before that merger goes through when Steve calls me on a phone call, and my son and I are listening to The Fish That Ate the Whale, a very appropriate book for his phone call. So we've named the session that. We're going to talk through that, but we'll also have leaders from Airbnb and Booking.com. This is in the #1 ranked cultural city in the world, Mexico City. So there's great restaurants, great places to stay. And of course, Guesty is known for our great parties, and we will have some of those as well. So I hope that each of you can join us there and join Steve there. Some of the Casago team is going to be there as well. To each of you, thank you for joining us today. Steve, a special thank you to you. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule and appreciate you taking time with us and a lot of the Guesty customers and family today.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.